What's cracking, guys? Omar Isov here, back with another video. In this video today, I got a very special guest. I have the doctor of assology himself, Bret Contreras. He's gonna break down how to do glute hip thrusts. He has a video on his channel, but today we're going in on it on the science behind glute hip thrusts, why everyone should be doing them, the potential benefits. Keep in mind, like I said before, literally his PhD is on the glutes themselves. This is a movement that recently, due to him talking about it, has gotten a lot of play, and for good reason. I was one of those individuals when I first saw it, I'm like, man, that kind of looks fucking weird. And I know a lot of people have that opinion. It looks like you're humping the bar on the ground, and that is essentially what you're doing. But they're crucial, first off, for building the glutes, stronger glutes, larger glutes, but also assisting you in becoming stronger on the squat and deadlift. This, once again, is a more informative video. Bret's gonna go all in on it. If you wanna see more content like this, taking a scientific approach, trying to give you guys informative content, trying to basically arm you with the proper knowledge that's necessary in order to make gains, like this damn video, leave a comment below what else you wanna see next. For now, just sit down, enjoy yourself. You're about to get schooled on the ass.
What's up, guys? I'm Coach Bret Contreras, and this is the ultimate hip thrust video. So first things first, why would you want a hip thrust? I've got 5 quick reasons for you. First reason, glute hypertrophy. Hip thrusts are very effective at building them cakes. This is why women love them. But men, you need to be doing them too. You should care just as much about glutes as you do all the other muscles in your body. If you have big pecs and big quads and a pancake butt, you look stupid. Second reason, deadlift lockout strength. Now, many powerlifters find that if they fail the deadlift up top here, and they do hip thrusts for about 6 weeks, twice a week, they turn their weakness into a strength. So what happens is you have more glute strength, more glute lockout strength to push the hips forward and then pull the shoulders back. Third reason, squat warm-up. Some powerlifters have anterior hip pain when they squat. And what they find is if they do 2 to 3 sets of 20 reps with light hip thrusts, for example 135 pounds, or with bands, then their anterior hip pain tends to go away afterwards when they squat. Reason number 4, improved athleticism. So hip thrusts are very effective at improving horizontal force production because the hardest part of the hip thrust is out here at the lockout, and this is associated with more neutral ranges of motion, so you can push forward horizontally more. And this is important for sports like football, rugby, mixed martial arts. But it doesn't just improve horizontal force, it can improve acceleration and speed because that requires a lot of horizontal force production, and just general hip power, especially if you're doing lots of variety, like barbell hip thrust, band hip thrust, single leg hip thrust, explosive hip thrust. And what you'll find is just during everyday life, you'll feel yourself using your glutes a little bit more. For example, when I walk uphill, I take these long strides and I feel my glutes powering me up. And that didn't used to happen before I hip thrusted. So the biggest problem with hip thrusts is that people will see other people on Instagram and YouTube doing heavy hip thrusts, and they think, oh, I can jump right into that. Now think about it. When we squat, we learn body weight first, then maybe a goblet squat, and then a barbell squat. Same with deadlifts. We teach hip hinging first, then maybe a kettlebell deadlift, and then a barbell. We take our time progressing, and the same thing needs to happen with hip thrusts. Now I can't tell you where to begin, but what I can tell you is that I started with 185, and then it took me 10 years to do 800 pounds for a single, but at year 5 I finally started using 500 pounds. I have trained one powerlifter and one CrossFitter who I thought, God, these guys squat 400 to 500 pounds and deadlift 500 to 600 pounds. They can at least use 135. They couldn't budge the bar. They had strong glutes in a hip flex position, but at end-range lockout, they needed to start with just body weight. You'd see them at lockout trembling. They'd be shaking. And so I had to build them up slowly. So make sure that whatever you start out with, you feel the glutes, and then build up gradually over time, and never lose that feeling. All right, first let's go over back position. I want you lined up with a bench at lower scapula level. So it looks like this. Right here. This is where you hip thrust from. Notice how low. I am not right here. I am right here at the bottom of my scapulae, and this is where I want you to hip thrust from. Now on this is an aerobic step, and I have 5 risers. So this works out perfectly because this is 14 inches tall, or 35.5 centimeters tall. Now when you use an aerobic some people feel some discomfort here. So what I do is I'll put a folded yoga pad over it. And you can use this when you use a bench. Some benches have more padding than others, but sometimes the padding is stripped away from the bench and you'll be pressing up against wood. And so the yoga mat works really good there. Now most of you will be hip thrusting out of a commercial gym and you'll be using a standard bench like this. The problem with these benches is that they're all different heights. This one here happens to be 17 inches tall, which is 43 centimeters high. So here's what happens. If I set up like this, I'm hinging from too high up on my back. If I go like this does not feel right. It's too high. So what I have to do is get into position, I come up, and I scoot up to here. But I will not, because I'm up higher, now I'm in the right place, I won't come down, I can't touch the ground. Because right here, to touch the ground, I would have to scoot back down and lose that position. So what I do is, just stay here, come down to about here, and then come back up. Right now I want to talk about bar padding. You need to have thick bar padding, not just some normal bar pad that you have at your gym that's flimsy. And you can't just roll up a yoga mat or something. When you get strong, you need thick bar padding. This is thick and dense. This happens to be a squat sponge, which is currently my favorite. But this does wonders for making this hip thrusting feel better. But think about it. Pain shuts down muscle activation. So if you have the bar digging into your pelvic bones, it's going to hurt like crazy and your glutes won't fire as hard. So many people find that as soon as they get a thick bar pad, their glute workouts become much more productive. So I get into place, and like I said, see my elbows here? I come up and I scoot up to here. Right now I get centered. From here, I only come down to right here and then come up. And that's how most of you are going to have to hip thrust, because the only thing you have access to is a taller bench. But hopefully you can figure out a way to hip thrust off a shorter bench. Again, 14 inches is ideal for most people, or 35.5 centimeters, and that requires an aerobic step or a hip thruster. Now, one of the drawbacks of using a thick bar pad is that it's so thick, now you can't roll it over your legs if you're a big guy or you just have big legs. And so what we do to counteract that is we use plates or mats. And what happens is now I can just roll it right over. So it gives me room, breathing room to get into proper position. And always make sure that if your bar pad has a slit, make sure that slit's facing upwards. If it's facing downwards, it will fall out, which defeats the purpose. So make sure it's facing upwards. Get into position. And then I want to talk about distance of your feet. So what you want is, when you're at the top of a hip thrust, you want your knees at around a 90-degree angle. So see if I'm about at 90? Now you have some wiggle room there. If you're at 80 or 100 degrees, that's fine too. But you don't want your feet too far out or too close. So what I recommend is really pay attention. Just like when you squat, you want to memorize your squat stance so you don't have to shuffle around in between each rep. You need to do that for your hip thrust as well. You need to get the sensation. For me, I know exactly where I tend to place my feet each time. This way I don't have to go like, say I start out too far. I come up and I'm like, oh, and then I have to scoot back. And then let's say I scoot back too far, and then I have to keep adjusting. You want to know exactly where your feet should go, to where your knees are at 90 degrees at lockout. While you're hip thrusting, you have two options with what to do with your feet. You can either just keep your feet planted and push through the whole foot, but think heels, because then you'll stay on your heels. Or you can actively dorsiflex just like this and keep them dorsiflexed the whole set. Now there is some research to show that when you dorsiflex, it increases the strength of everything up the chain through complicated neural mechanisms. But this is an individual thing. Some people like it more that way, other people not. Just figure out what you like most. Now let's discuss head and neck position. So when you hip thrust, I want you looking forward the whole time. Now I have mirrors in front of me, so it works out well. I just say don't take eye contact off of yourself. But if you don't have a mirror, just think forward eye gaze, and at the top, your chin ends up being tucked. So it looks like this. See, I'm looking in the mirror, I'm looking at myself, and then I come up. This is where I'm at. Just like this. And the reason why you want to do this is because it just takes care of your spinal and pelvic position. So the biggest problem with people feeling hip thrust discomfort in their back is when they go like this. And they have their chest up, and they're looking up, and they hyperextend the spine. You can't do that when you're looking forward. It fixes everything. So when you look forward, you go like this, and you end up keeping your ribs down, your torso ends up flat, and it actually looks like you're not coming up all the way, but you really are, because the pelvis posteriorly tilts, and posterior pelvic tilt is actually the same thing as hip hyperextension. So while you hip thrust, you have two options. Number one, you can kind of have at the bottom position, the chest can be up here. Now you can have the chest up a little bit here, as long as you don't keep the chest up, as long as you don't do this. So the chest can be up at the bottom, meaning some thoracic extension. But then watch what happens. At the top, you transfer from ribs up to ribs down. So I'm looking forward, my chest is up. So this is accompanied by a little bit of spinal movement, but not much. Now the other option is to just stay locked keep the spine locked. So keep the ribs down the whole time, chin tucked. So this, it's hard to look at yourself because you're actually looking down. Stay locked here and just go. So again, experiment to figure out what you like most. Now that I've taught you what to do, I'm going to teach you what not to do. First thing, don't wear Olympic weightlifting shoes. You don't need squat shoes because those have extra heel on them. They place you into plantar flexion, which is kind of similar to rising onto your toes. You don't want to do that. So you can hip thrust barefoot, you can wear flat shoes, just don't wear weightlifting shoes. And also, you don't need to wear a belt. The belt is encouraged when you do heavy squats or heavy deadlifts, but you don't need as much spinal support when you hip thrust. Yes, you should probably brace your core, you should take a breath, lock it down, but you don't need to wear a belt. I don't want you rising up onto your toes, stay feet flat or dorsiflexed. Make sure you don't cave in at the knees while you do hip thrust. So you'll see some people kind of go like this. Keep those knees out like this. This increases glute activation. What I like is taking a narrow stance and having the knees out just like this the whole time. So don't let your knees cave in. You also don't want to slide as you do this. So I do this when I go really heavy. What I find is I'm pushing back so hard that I'll start here, and then I'll come up and I'll slide way back. Or you can even tip backwards a little bit. So try to think of hinging from here. This is my hinging point, you know, and I'm just moving through here. And then the last thing, don't do partials. Meaning don't go so heavy that you can't reach full hip extension. And don't do too many reps to where you can't do full hip extension. So the set ends when you can't go all the way up. Now, here's what's tricky. This here is full hip extension. I can't go any higher. This is as high as I can go. Now watch. This is the reason why is because my ribs are down and my torso is flat. Watch what happens if I'm not extending at the hips, I'm just going to extend at the spine and look up. So meaning I'm going to do spinal hyperextension and anterior pelvic tilt and let my chest come up. Watch what happens. Looks like I'm coming a lot higher, but I'm only going higher through my back and pelvis. When I actually do good form, this is full hip extension. So make sure the top of your reps look like this every time, This is how they should look. You shouldn't see much deviation from this. But this last few inches, so you'll see people go so heavy and they'll go, ugh, and they'll go to here. This last few inches is where you get peak glute activation. For some reason, the glutes activate best when they're their shortest muscle lengths. That's not to be said for most other muscles. And so you want to make sure that when you hip thrust, you're reaching that zone. Now let's go over all the best hip thrust variations. So this is a dumbbell hip thrust. This is a 100-pounder, and you think, oh, this is too light. This is an awesome workout. I do this all the time. And I do this a lot when I travel and use hotel gyms, but I also do it here. And this is a really tall bench. This is actually 19 inches. So I would never do barbell hip thrust from here, but you get into a position like this, okay? I scoot forward, and from here, watch, I don't go down all the way, I just go to here, and then so I will do 2 to 3 sets of 25 reps with these, and I feel it working so well. So give the dumbbell hip thrust a try. Here's the American hip thrust, and this works well with people who tend to experience back pain with normal hip thrusting. And what you end up doing is you just come up and you hinge from even higher up. So here's the normal position. You come up even higher, right here. And so it's just a little pelvic tilting action from here to here. So you'll see chest up here, but watch my chest. It doesn't change position, it's just, and some people prefer that, not everyone, it's not for everyone, maybe 1 in 5, but give that a try and see if you like it. Here's the single leg hip thrust. So I'm going to come down, get into position, I'm going to put my arms out, I'm going to center my feet, just like this. And then I will raise one leg up. Begin with your weaker leg planted. So I'm going to raise one leg up, I come down, I come up, same principles, I'm looking forward. Switch, repeat. When you get good at single leg, you can add resistance in the form of a dumbbell. Just place it over the hip like this. Switch. Here are band hip thrusts. Now band hip thrusts are tricky, but some gyms have power racks where you can set them up. Some people can set them up in a Smith machine. What you're going to do is you want tension at the bottom, tension at the top, just like that. This is the hip thruster, which is an apparatus I designed to allow for comfortable hip thrusting. Now, this is 16 inches tall, but the mat here is 2 inches tall, effectively making it 14 inches, which is 35.5 centimeters, which is the same height as that aerobic step with 5 risers. Now, most people do well with this height, but some people, like generally women that are under 5'2", or just people who have very short torsos and long legs, they do better sitting on this AirX pad or just using 4 risers instead of 5. Now, I don't need to use this, but notice that I use rubber pads. These are 1.5 inches thick. These rubber mats are better than those plates. And then notice the band pegs. So this makes for very convenient band hip thrust. And we use a couple more things, which I'll show you in a minute. We love this slingshot hip circle. My favorite is the grippy one. This is a small medium grippy hip circle. And then I've already mentioned the squat sponge. So this is the hip thruster. So when I do band hip thrust, I don't come all the way down. Just from here, I come up, squeeze, come down just about to here to keep some tension on the hips. And I make fists. And with some people, the bands will curl back on them. So for those people, I tell them, dig your thumbs right here. And just do it like this. And you can really go heavy on the bands by doubling up, tripling up. They make monster bands, which are even thicker than this strong band, and I can get probably 600-700 pounds of tension, enough to give me bruises if I want. So you can go really hard with the bands. Here's the double band hip thrust. So I put the hip circle above my knees. Some people like it below the knees, but most prefer above the knees. I will use a narrow stance and get my legs out. I'll keep them like this. Then from here, now you can use this with a barbell as well. So it doesn't just have to be with the bands. So a lot of times we vary cadence with the barbell hip thrust. So here is how we do pause reps. So get into position, and then you'll go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You'll have to go lighter with those, but these are a favorite with a lot of people. Okay. We also do constant tension reps, which are very rapid, and you don't quite touch down. You just go boom, 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 very rapid. So constant tension looks like this. We do these for high reps, sets of 20. There are also a lot of variations involving tempo. So in addition to just doing standard repetitions, we also do pause reps. We do constant tension reps, we do rest pause, and we do explosive reps, and I'll go over all 4 of them here. So pause reps is just you pause at the top for either 1 second, 3 seconds, or 5 seconds is what we typically do. 3 seconds being the most common, so that looks like this. 1, 2, 3, down. And we touch down on these. Pause for 3 full seconds. Start counting when you get to the top. Don't start counting early, and don't start coming down. So sometimes if you want them to pause for 3 seconds, you tell them 5 seconds because they shortchange it. Constant tension reps, you can get around, we do high reps with these. It's normal to get around 20 reps in 20 seconds. And these are rapid reps, and you don't touch down, so it looks like this. I'll do 5 of them. Just like that. These produce a crazy burn in the glutes. All right, rest pause. This naturally tends to happen when you're doing a really heavy set of hip thrusts. It's kind of unavoidable. And picture doing as much weight as you can for 10 reps. What you'll typically find is you'll get around 6 reps, and then you'll breathe for a little bit. Then you'll get like 2 more reps, breathe for a little bit, get 1 more, breathe for a little bit, and get 1 more. So it's just a way of extending the set to get more reps. So it would look like this, where you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 normal. Come down, breathe, rest. Get 2 more. Rest about 5 seconds. Squeeze 1 more out. Come down. Now you're feeling like dying, but you know you can really get 1 more. And then finally, squeeze the last one out, hold the top for as long as you can, come down, and then you're dead. So that's another method that's common here. And I just say rest, do 6 reps, rest 5 seconds, do 2 reps, rest 5 seconds, do 1 last rep, rest, and then you're done. And then the last is explosive reps. And this, I think, is very good if you're trying to be an athlete, if you want to increase your hip power, your speed. This is like dynamic effort method that's popular in powerlifting, used with squats, bench, and deadlifts. But the only thing with this is that when you lift explosively, the bar can come off your hips. It will come off your hips because you're exploding up. And if you're using a thick bar pad like this, it can fall through the slit. You can't have that, or else this will turn in midair, and all of a sudden, the bar will be on your hip bones. So you got to trap this in. Trap it in, and then don't touch down on these reps. So what you'll find is if you touch down when you're lifting explosively, it throws you off, and you're all over the place. So it looks like this, and I use around 50% of 1 rep max for 5 sets of 5. So You don't go heavy on these. You can use about half of the weight you can possibly do, and you just do 5 sets, 5 reps as explosive as possible. It looks like this. So that's how we vary tempo. Here's an advanced technique called the eccentric single leg hip thrust, and I'm going to use both legs to lift up, raise one leg off the ground, and lower under a 5-second count. Now I'll do about 3 sets of 3 reps, meaning 3 reps with each leg, so a total of 6 repetitions. But I come up like this, go all the way up. Don't start here. Come all the way up, lift one leg off the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then get a total of 6. Repeat for 3 total sets. This is probably my favorite way to hip thrust right now. And if you can see, it involves these mini bands, but these are actually really strong, short bands. I got these from Sorenex, but I'll use the green or the blue. The blue are even stronger. And this just makes it really, really hard at the lockout. Feels amazing. But I'll do around 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps. And this is the bar plus 2-band hip thrust. It looks like this. You really have to squeeze that end range. So those are my favorite hip thrust variations, but there are plenty more. As I mentioned earlier, you can wear mini bands or a hip circle around your knees for a lot of these. If you're in a commercial gym, you can also use a Smith machine, and a lot of women like using the lying leg curl machine to do hip thrusts, and they typically put a step up to put their feet on. They put their back on the and on the leg curl unit and use the moving pendulum because it's padded to do hip thrusts. So you just have to get creative and figure out the best variations for you. But last but not least, let's discuss program design. You can hip thrust once a week, twice a week, or 3 times a week, or even more, but it just depends on how you set things up. For example, if you did band hip thrust 5 days a week, you could probably do just fine. But some of the most popular ways are to employ a DUP protocol. Now, DUP stands for Daily Undulated Periodization, and this would have you, now there's a lot of ways to set up a DUP plan, but if you hip thrusted 3 times a week, here's a popular one that I used with a couple different clients who saw amazing results. But we only did this for 6 weeks. At the end of 6 weeks, they were trashed, because imagine pushing hip thrusts, 18 times hard as hell within a 6-week period. You need to deload after that. But it involved, on Monday, 4 sets of 10, on Wednesday, 5 sets of 6, and on Friday, 3 sets of 15. But the last set on each day was an AMRAP set, so they did as many reps as possible. So if they could do more, they did more. And then loads were increased each week according to whether or not they got all 4 sets. And that led to huge improvements. I actually employed that with a subject for my PhD thesis, and I actually measured strength and glute muscle thickness, and there were like 28% gains in gluteus maximus muscle thickness in just that 6-week period, and her hip thrust strength went through the roof. She was hip thrusting 200 pounds, and it went to like 335 pounds just in 6 weeks. But when I do that DUP plan, I can't get away with it. My body ends up hurting. My knees end up hurting, like right here at the quadriceps tendon, and I just start hating hip thrusting. However, when I worked my way up to an 800-pound hip thrust, I was hip thrusting 3 times a week, but I wasn't barbell hip thrusting 3 times a week. What I did was, 1 day a week, I did heavy barbell hip thrusts, and I do like 3 sets, but only 1 would be all out, and I'd go for a PR with a certain load. I ended up getting 405 for 20 reps, I got 495 for 15 reps, I got 585 for 10 reps, I got 725 for 2 reps, and then I ended up getting 800 pounds for 1 rep. And so I would just kind of try to pick a load and go all out and set a new PR. That was on Monday. On Wednesday, I do band hip thrusts. And what I found was I could double up, I would actually triple up. So I'd use the black monster band, which is like thick as hell. I'd use the blue and the green all together, and I bet you that provided at least 600 pounds of tension at the top, maybe even more. It would leave bruises on me. But I did that for 3 sets of 6 to 10. And then on Friday, I do the bar plus band, this method right here. And this was moderate weight, I do around 2 sets of 10 to 15 reps, really focusing on the end range squeeze, and that let me build up to the 800-pound hip thrust. Now, we also do a lot more. We use every popular scheme you can think of. 4 sets of 10, 3 sets of 8, 5 sets of 5, sometimes 3 singles if you're working on your heavy hip thrust, which I don't think is best for hypertrophy, but sometimes it's fun to get really strong at this lift. Sometimes we do 2 sets of 20. Sometimes we do a set of 5, a set of 3, a set of 1. Sometimes this was popularized by Vince Gironda, 10, 8, 6, 15. So a set of 10, a set of 8, a set of 6, and then a back off set of 15. And finally, sometimes I was doing this when I built up to 800 pounds as well. On off days, sometimes I just do 1 high rep set of like 80 reps. When I typically do the frog method where my feet were together. And do just like 1 or 2 sets of super high reps for like 80. And those are the most popular set and rep schemes and frequency strategies, but you can figure out your own best ones. I hope you enjoy the video.
Well guys, that is all the time we have. My thanks to Dr. Bret Contreras for doing this video, talking all about the glutes, the glute hip thrust, their function, why people should be doing it. I know it was a longer video, but sometimes we got to bring that informative thunder. It's got to be a little bit longer. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked the video, you made it all the way to the end of the video, comment below, #glutes in the comment section. Like the damn video if you want to see more content with Bret Contreras. I'm trying to bring a variety of experts on this channel to help you guys out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be seeing all you guys, my rascals, in that next video. Peace.
The thrust is a must.